Kingdoms rise and empires crumble, and the knowledge and wisdom from past ages are lost to the foggy ruins of time. But for genuine seekers of truth, one place stands alone on a hill, shining brightly in the darkness. You, dear listener, have reached the Hidden Citadel.
Hey, welcome to the Hidden Citadel.
You found us!
Well, today we're going to be talking about my dog. Because when we found him, he was so emaciated because he had been out, we found him in the neighborhood just running around and he was starving. And he was just a puppy. And when they brought him home, I said, "Is that a Chupacabra?" Because he kind of had that Chupacabra look about him.
Although I think they're well fed, the
Yeah,
Chupacabras.
maybe. But then this guy fattened up and it he got better. But today we're going to be talking about the Chupacabra. And both of us lived in Texas, so I remember talking to ranchers and who believed that the Chupacabra was a real critter that was roaming around out there. So it ought to be an interesting discussion. I meant to send you this video. It was from Monster Quest, and they interviewed a lady who was a doctor, a medical doctor, and she was also a big game hunter. So, which is an odd combination for somebody to spot a Chupacabra.
Well, your emphasis is kind of funny.
Yeah.
She's a big game hunter. So she got Monopoly, Parcheesi.
Yes, she plays them all.
She found them. She
Every
hunted them
single
down.
game you can think of.
And she was like 7 feet tall. Yeah,
yes,
she's 7 feet tall. And she played board games.
And she plays lots of board games.
Hated Milton Bradley. Just
she doesn't like him except for Mousetrap.
That's it. That's the only one. Because it's a small game.
Yeah, right. She basically hunted all over the world for gazelles and zebra and all sorts of different animals. So this is a lady that is not, well, number one, she's a medical doctor. So when she looks at the corpses of the animals on her farm that were attacked, she knows what she's looking at. And when she is out there hunting this creature, she's got kind of an idea. So it's an interesting combination of skills. And I just stumbled onto it just a few minutes ago before we started recording.
Oh, wow.
And so I watched her segment of the show, and I had seen this before, like a couple years ago. But this was I had totally forgot about it until I just found it again. And what I find interesting about her tale is she came out and found her chickens were dead, and they were all cut across the throat, and they had no blood in them whatsoever. And she was like, most predators will take the chicken and eat it. So I raised chickens for a couple years, and all of our chickens eventually got killed by some predator. And whenever a dog came and attacked the chicken, the dog would go around and grab each chicken and break its neck by flinging it around.
Yeah.
And then drag them off so that he could eat them later into like his den.
Yeah.
When the raccoons got to the chicken, the way that they killed the chicken is, I didn't really see exactly how they killed them, but all that was left was the rib cage and some feathers. Like they just ate their way through the chicken.
Like a rotisserie,
Like a rotisserie, yeah. And from top to bottom. And then the rats came out, I guess, later, or possums or something, and ate the rest of the chicken. But, and then even like squirrels will eat. That's why it's real hard to find. Like some people argue and they say, well, if there really are cryptids, how come we can't find any bodies?
Yeah.
Well, little animals like squirrels will eat the bones for the calcium. And so a lot of times there's nothing left of an animal if it's died of natural causes out in the wild, because, when you find it, a lot of times it's tucked under a bush or something like that where it's kind of hard to get to. But and nature will clean itself up pretty well when things die. And so that might be one reason why cryptids aren't that easy to find. But this lady, she was telling the story about how she saw it running across the land, and she tried to shoot at it, but she didn't get one. But she's not the only one. There have been a lot of people that have shot these things and have turned them into science. And whenever the people do studies on them, they say, well, it's not a dog with mange unless it's like such a severe amount of mange that it's affected the skin and actually changed the skin into something different. The other thing too that people talk about is like in certain areas they talk about chupacabras walking upright on its hind legs like a kangaroo.
Wow.
And it looks like a weird cross between a kangaroo and a dog and a porcupine, because they have like these spikes, like spiny spikes out the back. So it's kind of like, what is this thing? And if it's not real, what on earth is killing all of these animals and sucking their blood dry?
Yes, it's like, because it's funny because it's like a picture like a hellhound, but it's whenever you have I feel like we've been through this before where we're kind of examining the possibilities, and you kind of have to conceptualize it in almost a good versus evil kind of thing. And it's like what is this? Like, what does it do? What is it? Where did it come from? What perpetuates it? Kind of thing. And it's really interesting that it's like the nature of it. Like, well, first of all, the cabra is a goat, correct? So it's like,
right,
and the chupa means suck, so it's goat sucking. Which the goats have always from just basic amateur satanic lore to the scapegoat or the Azazel or whatever it was.
That's true.
So it has a little bit of I think
I should have added that in our article. That would have been really good.
It has some other foundational things that make it a really good candidate for the Hidden Citadel discussion, because it does, we've talked about the why the blood and the sucking of blood and the vampiric kind of thing, having also to do with, like, when you look at why, something that is the antithesis of good would take from drain of blood rather than promote life. And then the fact that it is associated with the goat, the fact that it is a dog, which is God backwards, the fact that it is it checks a lot of boxes.
It does.
So I would say that it'd be really interesting at the end of all times, when you find out the story behind them, that it was a kind of a companion dog to Nephilim or demon kinds of things, and their function was to find things that would promote life or be used for sacrifice and make them impure, take out their blood, make them damaged where they cut them, where they go. Because you find a dead thing, you go, oh, a dead thing. If you think, well, it might be a meal, then you find that it's been ritualized essentially, and also blemished in such a way that now it's contaminated that you can't do anything with it. It's made to be the opposite of what was when Peter had had the sheet full of kill and eat, or when everything was given to man. Now these things are corrupted by the way of this secret creature.
Yeah, and the thing too is, I find it strange that wherever there's a chupacabra, it seems like there's sort of a military installation not too far away.
Yeah.
In Puerto Rico, there is some sort of I don't know if it's a military or if it's a privately owned science research facility, but where the first chupacabra was found, there is a big research facility there that I think works with the government. Along Texas, there's several military bases in those areas of Texas where the chupacabra was found. In the one video I sent of the military guys that found the chupacabra in Chile, the military was involved with that one as well. And that was weird. I don't know how much stock I put into that story, but the fact that they found a male and a female chupacabra with a young chupacabra and a nest of eggs.
Yeah.
It was like, that was weird. Now, nobody said that the eggs were chupacabra eggs, like it hatched
Yeah.
from, but they talk about its skin being scale-like,
Yeah.
which, some animals like turtles, have scaly skin that was very similar to some of the skin that you see on chupacabras. So, I mean, could it be sort of a marsupial of some sort, that might hatch from an egg? Who knows? Or what about this? What if it drinks the blood of animals, but it also collects eggs? Because there are certain animals that steal eggs
Yeah.
out of nests and take them back and eat them. So maybe that's what was happening there. It might not be that they hatch from an egg, but that they gather them and save them for a meal for their young or something.
Yeah, it's very symbolic there. I mean, if you take the combination of the two, something that's taking the blood out of something, and also reducing the life of a persistent family. Taking the eggs of something is not allowing the family to continue in such a way. So it does just have a very nefarious kind of
something very
existence to it.
evil about the whole thing.
Yeah, and
it's almost. I mean, have we talked about the dire wolf?
Yes.
I think we spoke about that the guys from Skinwalker Ranch allegedly found.
Yeah.
And it's like, if there is, and I don't know that a chupacabra necessarily matches with any kind of prehistoric animal that we know of, but what if there is a time slip happening and this is not a normal animal of our time, but that it's something else slipping in, or maybe something slipping in and breeding with modern animals?
That's interesting, because first, when you said that, the first thing I thought of with the scales is that this is the time slip is somehow, this is something from, the way in the past.
Yeah.
But it could very well be something in the future that ends up being in such distortion that it has it's mammalian, but then have scales, but then let's just make it lay eggs and feed on blood, which is still interesting that it's not a.
Well, how do you get protein out of blood?
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to feed only on blood, the protein's in the muscle, I would think.
Yeah.
So it's like, how could you just exist off of that? And I know there are animals that do. Ticks, that's and mosquitoes.
Yeah.
But they're tiny little animals, and they're not building muscle or anything like a chupacabra would need to.
Well, in the investigation of, or the possibility of, all right, that's not a chupacabra, what other animal could it be? What about those really big bats? Those those they have in the Amazon and stuff.
They call them the vampire bats, but they're not. Vampire bats are actually really little bats.
Yeah.
That bite your toe and lick the blood off of your toe or the webbing of your fingers or things like that. But those big bats are a type of fruit bat.
Yeah.
And they're mostly herbivores. They pretty much exist off of eating fruit and bugs and small animals like little tiny mice and things like that. I find it hard. And the other thing about it is, if a bat were to walk around, crawl.
Yeah.
It would not look like a kangaroo because its wings have to fold up in order for it to be able to move.
What about a wingless bat? What if it was almost
maybe?
But wouldn't that look like a kangaroo though?
I would think so.
If it was standing up.
Or what was it? In D&D they had the claw white or whatever it was.
Oh yeah.
Was the bear kind of thing with really long arms.
Yeah.
I would imagine that's what it would look like.
Yeah.
Cave white. I forget what they called them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those things, that's probably what you're describing with the bat, with the wingless bat. Hang on. My guitar is sliding over.
It's funny because that almost reminds me of what we saw with the New Jersey Devil.
Yeah.
We're kind of talking about that. But the other box this checks, I mean, just in the side of this does not seem like on the side of good, or this is not a neutral thing. Adiaphorus. This is not something that you can just kind of go, all right, let it be. Who cares? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
again, it's the box of goat sucking blood.
It's
A lot
really
of different
weird.
stopping, and that's the big one. And it wherever it is, it induces fear. So
Yes.
that is like the biggest box that needs to be checked here.
You're absolutely right about that. And that's the thing that I think we're finding a commonality with all these cryptids is it's not even a normal fear. Like, okay, one time when I think I was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe it was my first year of college or something. And I lived at home when I was in college because my college was just down the road.
Mm-hmm.
So I commuted. But one night, Dad told me to take the trash out, and we lived out in the middle of nowhere, so we had a trash pit that all of our trash went into, and we'd burn it up and then bury it when it got filled up or whatever. So Dad told me to take the trash out to the trash pit, but there had been reports of somebody or that people had seen mountain lions
Oh,
in the area, which was really weird for the middle of Indiana because we didn't. I mean, mountain lions hadn't lived in Indiana for hundreds and hundreds of years,
mm-hmm.
and I remember walking to the trash pit and saying, "Man, how would you know if the mountain lion was out here? I mean, they're so quiet and
Yeah,
stealthy and everything that it could just leap on your back." And I was freaking myself out,
yeah,
just going to take the trash out and come back. Of course, it's not like where I live here in the city where you're just taking the trash down to the curb. We had to go down over the hill
mm-hmm.
and into the woods and chuck the trash into the pit. And it's like, there could have been a mountain lion if they were in the area.
Yeah,
Why not be in our woods,
yeah.
And then finally, I think a hunter caught it or shot it or something.
Oh, it's real.
Eh, Oh
Okay.
yeah, it was real. Yeah, and nobody knew where it came from, but it somehow had gotten into the area, and they don't know if maybe somebody had got it as a pet and then let it go,
Mm-hmm.
or if it was like a pair of them that had come down from, wherever. I did know a guy that in my one of my martial arts classes, he was a bounty hunter,
Mm-hmm.
and he actually owned two pet mountain lions,
That's
and
disaster.
I know, but they were like kittens. He'd bring them to class, and I was allergic to cats, so it's like I couldn't go near them. But everybody else would sit there and roll around on the floor with them and play with them and everything. And I'm like, yeah, and they were big, they weren't like, just a big house cat. These were lions,
Yeah,
and it
that's
was,
bad.
but that's a type of fear that is sort of a natural fear
Yeah,
that
a
anybody
respect.
might.
Yeah,
It's a respect. It's like walking down a dark alley at night. You're like, okay, I'm wary, I'm looking around,
mm.
but you're not in panic mode
Right.
to where you're losing your faculties.
Yes.
And yet, sometimes with these cryptids, people, it's like they go into a state of shock immediately.
Yeah.
It's like something affects it's the cognitive dissonance thing that it's like once you run into one, you're like, does not compute, and your brain just locks
Yeah.
up.
And it's also a collective contagion, so that
Mm-hmm.
it's a polarization that once the fear is introduced, it spreads wildly like a contagion
Mm-hmm.
does. Collectively, people begin to see things that aren't there, begin to fear
Mm.
things that aren't there, and then create a structure of how everyone's going to live
Mm-hmm.
based on the new fear. It's called group polarization, and so this
Well, and that's
that's where you get
exactly
those.
what happened with the Beast of Bladenborough
Yeah.
and what happened with the 1916 or whatever it was uh, accounts of the Jersey Devil that we
Yeah.
talked about last time, because the people really freaked out when they started to think about it
Mhm.
and to know that it was out there, and then they kind of started seeing it everywhere.
Mm.
But I don't know. But how do you argue with the person that hauls one in that they shot
I
on their
know.
ranch? And so there's the difference I
Yeah.
find between the Chupacabra And the weird thing about the Chupacabra is the specimens that I've seen, it's almost as if their front teeth come out
Yeah.
and make almost like a beak sort of a thing. And
Yeah.
and its skin, like my neighbor has one of those, what are they called, Chichloo dogs or whatever, where they're bald, those bald chihuahuas that I forget what they're called. I probably
Hairless? I don't
butchered
know.
that, but they're these weird hairless chihuahuas.
Yeah.
And this thing's skin is the strangest skin you've ever touched. It's like it's just bizarre. It's like touching some 90-year-old man's bald head
Yeah.
or something.
That's you had to be worried there, but you put the
I
put the right
saved
consonant
it.
at the end. Yeah, you didn't put an S, you put a D.
Yeah, no, yeah, right.
I was like, where's he going with this? Okay.
It's very bizarre, but that's kind of what this Chupacabra skin looked like. And so the scientists that were studying in some of the videos that they had done samples, they're like, it comes back as a carnivore, but it doesn't come back as any known carnivore that we know of. And it's kind of related to a dog, but we're not really sure. You know, and the skin is like, what is this, some kind of new breed of hairless dog or something? You know, and
it's almost like, all right, so let's place it somewhere. It's the part of the show where we place it somewhere. Let's place it in some sort of mythology, or in some theory of existence, whether Atlantis, whether
there you go.
You know what I mean? So like otherworldly. Dimensionalic,
Yes.
dimensionalistic. I don't know.
I'm more inclined to. I like the dimensional aspect of it.
Or
like maybe it's coming in from some other dimension.
Or this would be really kind of interesting too. That this came from the same hole as the children of Woolput, because
there you go.
It's so bizarre that
Yes.
it's from the. Do you remember that whole thing you said that it was debunked about the United States and
the
Soviet
giant
Union
hole in
trying to
Russia.
And I remember Chuck Missler talking about it. One of the points he was making is, if God is everywhere around us, then the farthest point of God is in the middle of the earth.
Mm-hmm.
From inside the earth, that would be the distance from God, and so that would be the place that would house the lake of fire.
Well,
it could very well. But
so let's talk about that for a second.
Okay.
Just that hole is it. They got, I think it was 7 miles down in Russia, which is just scratching the surface. They didn't even get anywhere into the. So that's the first part of that. That's kind of questionable. The second part of it, though, is the whole story of them hearing screams and all that, and the people screaming from hell.
Yeah.
That was first released by CBN in the 70s or the 80s, and they got it from a Finnish news source. But what they didn't realize is the Finnish news source was a magazine like our National Enquirer.
Oh.
And they thought it was a regular newspaper.
Yeah.
And so they ran with the story, and then everybody else kind of ran with the story for a while. But then it turned out that it was just actually the Finnish people were poking fun of the Russians spending all that money on what they considered a worthless project. And so they wrote the article as kind of as a joke. But the CBN people took it and they were like, it's a Christian broadcast news or network, so we need to tell about they found hell. And it's like, hell's probably in another dimension too.
Right. But hell.
Although it does say that the earth gave up its dead and the sea gave up its dead.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be down in there, like Missler speculated, but we haven't even gotten close to getting anywhere near there because I think I read somewhere that the crust is like 40 miles thick.
But you look at going back to the possible, remember we were talking about the civilizations that were underground.
Yeah.
Whole cities that the Smithsonian shut
Yep.
down some of the discoveries in the
Arizona,
Grand Canyon
yep.
and that sort of thing. But like similar to the wolf hut thing, and he's similar to the what the kind of the adjustments that life has when life has been found in in Mariana's Trench, that sort of
Yep.
thing, where the eyes become bulbous, where
Yep.
there's a lot of adjustments that the body,
Bioluminescence.
it becomes, there's an adjustment to what it's around. All right, so you take maybe that these creatures were from like the depths, and so
Mm-hmm.
they adjusted by their the microevolution kind of thing, where the skin became
Sure.
leathery or scaly.
Yeah.
Their
Well, what do you need
sustenance,
fur for if you're
especially,
living down in underground?
well, and especially like sustenance, it could very well be just blood instead,
Yeah.
'cause it's very quick. You're not, the amount of time that it would take to pick something apart and eat it, in
Mm-hmm.
its fully, is takes a lot more time than if
Then
they
to
could
just
just
suck
like
the blood
boom,
right
take it out. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like,
So we've established that the chupacabra is an inner earth creature that
yes.
somehow they dug a hole in Puerto Rico and brought the first specimen up,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we found out about it. And
Yeah.
and he ate all the green children of Woolpit
That's it.
and sucked their blood out.
Yeah, they're green. They're green blood.
That's it. We've solved it. They
Yeah,
were Vulcans.
We're done. Yeah. But where does the goat part come in? Because they were
Well,
attacking goats.
In Puerto Rico, the first groups that got attacked were goat farmers. Oh, but this is something interesting. You mentioned bioluminescence, but also, or maybe I did, but you were talking about in the Mariana Trench, things grow differently.
Yeah.
Okay. One guy in one of the videos talked about how he said, I hunt raccoons all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And he said when you
I remember that.
when you shine a light on a raccoon, their eyes glow a certain way. He said this thing's eyes glue by itself without me shining a light on it, and they were red.
Glue?
I think that's what he said. Glowed. He's from Texas, so I can't help it.
I can go with it. I like it. Elmer.
It's spelled GLEW.
Yep. Yeah. I think that works. It might be a real word.
Maybe.
Elmer Glue.
Elmer Glue. And he also did call the raccoon a ratcoon, which was kind of a strange thing,
nice.
too.
Raccoon.
Anyway, so here's my point.
Yeah.
He's an English speaker, sort of.
Yeah.
I think we've kind of established that's a little questionable.
Mostly
English speaker. But the same reports in Puerto Rico, in Brazil, in Chile, all say that their eyes are red and they glow. So it's like, well, wait a minute. These are different languages now.
Yeah.
And we're not just talking about English to Spanish, because you would think, okay, well, in Texas, maybe a lot of ranchers speak Spanish.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're talking also about Portuguese. So the Portuguese-speaking people have said that it glows with red eyes.
Yeah.
The Spanish speakers from both Puerto Rico and Chile and Mexico all say that it glows with red eyes. And then the Americans that seen it said that it glows in the dark, that the eyes do. So now we're talking about something that's completely foreign, because all these hunters are used to seeing animals with their eyes glowing in the dark, so it's like, it goes back to the one episode we talked about. I think it was the Moth Man episode, where we said that a lot of these people live close to the land. When you're a rancher, you are aware of the dirt in the ground. You're aware of the animals that you can grow, that you can breed in that kind of environment. You're aware of the crops that will grow in that kind of an environment. You're aware of the predators that live in that kind of environment. And a lot of the predators have been hunted out in a lot of these states. Like wolves used to roam all the way from Canada down to Texas, and now wolves have to be reintroduced if they're going to be in an area. And still people, I don't care if the government sets a wolf loose and says, okay, we're reintroducing wolves. If it gets on your property and you have a ranch and it's going after your chickens, you're going to shoot it. You
Yep.
know, that's just how it is. And if the government says you can't shoot our wolf, then it's just going to find its way into a hole somewhere and nobody's going to know about it.
Yes.
But they're not going to call up the papers and say, what on earth is this thing that I shot that was sucking the blood? And I've never seen a wolf suck the blood out of a chicken. You know, it's not the way that it works.
Yeah. But I think it'd be really interesting if, because it does seem like they're nocturnal. But it'd be really interesting if another kind of micro evolutionary adjustment was that almost like infrared eyes. So in other words, they know where the heat is, so they know how to hunt, because that'll tell them where the blood is.
Yeah, well, vipers have that, but they sense it. And isn't it? Well, how is it that sharks, they have an electrical sense that instead of being infrared, it's like an electricity that they get from in their nose too? But it's like, well, maybe there could be some sort of an infrared eyeball adaptation that if something is used to living underground, maybe that happened. But
it's funny. It's like an extended bioluminescence that it's like it is chemical, but it does somehow, you know, it's connected to the eye or connected to perceptual features of the brain, whatever it is that it's. So again, it seems like they follow the children we'll put out. Right. That's what I want.
Well,
that's what I want the story to be.
Bigfoot could be that way too. Maybe he came from out of the ground. But I watched a video. It was Wartime Stories, and he was talking about the invention of the starlight scope and how before the starlight scope was invented and first used in Vietnam, back in the turn of the century, there was a scientist who was, I think he was also an optician, and he was working on a coating that you could put on lenses that would allow you to be able to see in the dark. It was like one of the earliest, experiments in this.
Yeah.
And what he found was you put this coating on the lens, and you could see because it would somehow amplify the ambient light in the area, but it was red, and everything looked red, and it was freaky looking because it was like a hellscape, and it was poisonous. So the more you used this stuff, the more it affected your vision, and you could actually go blind from it. And he stopped experimenting when he realized that it was having a negative impact on his actual vision. And some people claim that the early optics for the starlight scope was made out of the same material. And in the Wartime Stories, he was saying people were seeing demons and things like that. He recounted his own experience that he had when he was in Force Recon Marine, the guy that does the host of the Wartime Stories.
Yeah.
And they're kind of like the Marine Green Berets or whatever. And he said one night he had his glasses on, and he was sitting there talking to his partner for like 5 or 6 minutes, and then his partner comes walking up and he says, "Who are you talking to?" And he turns around and his partner's right there. He's like, "Wait a minute, I thought you were right there."
Yeah.
And so there was some sort of something that happened, whether it was a glitch in the optics or whatever it was. He said I could never explain what it was. And but something happened that caused him to think. And he said, I'm not the first person that has experienced that. Like a lot of military people have talked about that was something that happened on a regular basis, or not regular, but that happens sometimes with these night vision goggles. And but the point was this chemical that they originally used that they could put on glass made everything look red. And what if an eyeball developed that could produce that chemical as needed? Wouldn't it would look like it was glowing red.
Is there any condition that I feel like there's that they call it vampiric or they call it whatever it is, but is there a condition in which you're and it could be like going back to that idea of that, these are near the military bases, that there's something that the military is working on that affected like basic like wild dogs, and cause them then to crave like blood. And I
Well,
thought
that's
there
what
was a
I
condition
wonder.
where you crave blood.
Well, I think there's vampirism as an actual psychological condition
Yes.
where
Yeah.
people think that they need to drink blood to survive.
Right. But
And
I
I
mean,
don't know if an
more so,
animal can get that or not.
it's almost like a zombie dog or something, because again, it it looks like a monster.
Yep.
It feeds on the living in a weird way.
Yep. Well,
Scaly, like it
in one
looks
of
dead.
the accounts, oh yeah, they definitely look like a zombie.
Like a dead dog.
In one of the accounts, there was a puncture in the back of the head.
Yes.
Wasn't I think the brains were gone?
Yes.
Like we talked about that before. And that lines right up with the alien abduction thing where people say that where aliens are present, they find animals with the puncture in the back of the head. The brain is gone and the blood's removed.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so maybe instead of being an underground animal, they're just alien dogs that the aliens brought with them and they're their pets. You know?
That's kind of a good theory. I like that theory.
But we did kind of establish that the aliens actually are from the inner Earth. So we're back to them being from the inner Earth again.
But it's so interesting. Just the little common components of the eyes, the darkness, a lot of like coming out of nowhere.
Yeah.
You know, kind of canine, but not really.
Yep, the overwhelming fear.
The overwhelming fear, yeah.
And what do you think about that from a psychological viewpoint? What can you tell us about fear? And are there different levels of fear? I mean, it's obvious that there are, but I mean, are there categories of fear that anybody's done research on? Because, like, I saw a picture one time in a book. I can't remember what the book was, but they said, I think it was an art book, and it was about how to draw people's faces. Mm-hmm. And they actually had a picture. They had a section in the book on emotions. And they had a picture of a guy, and it says, this is an actual picture of a man who was completely terrified, and this picture was taken literally seconds before he died.
Wow.
And the guy's face was like, and it was all contorted and everything. Yeah. So it's like, what do you know about the levels of fear that people can experience? And is there like really, could one person encounter Chupacabra and not, or a Bigfoot or whatever, and not have that paralyzing fear, and another person could go totally into that fear paralysis? I mean, what do you know about that?
I mean, well, fear, there's no like diagnoses that says fear, but there's diagnoses of panic, of anxiety, not of worry. There's phobias. I mean, there's hundreds of phobias. Canophobia.
Like what do you call what is canophobia?
That's a fear of dogs.
What do you call a fear of Democrats?
Sinistrophobia.
Yeah. Sinistrophobia.
Sinistrophobia. Fear of the left.
Fear of the left.
And the LaHaye version is the fear of the left behind.
Oh, so is that it? Okay. Yeah. Sinestra anterior.
Sinestra anterior.
A phobia. I guess there are some people that actually have that kind of weird fear.
I think they do.
Need to read the book Hard Rain, they would learn not to be afraid of that. There's plenty of other things to be afraid of.
LaHaye translated is the hay.
Yes, that's it.
From the French.
Making hay, he's getting lots of money.
Yeah. But yeah. But the one thing, it's interesting, is a friend of mine sent me a devotional this morning, and it was just about, God fights the battles for us. And then the whole thing ended with fear is a liar.
Oh yeah.
But not Lyre. Fear is the LIAR.
Yeah.
And it's really in a way that's a great way to reduce it down to an understandable concept, and an understandable and defeatable concept.
Yes.
Because if it's a liar, then truth is something that will set you free from it. If it's a liar, you don't believe it. If it's a liar, you know that it has a function that is not good. And so that's, but the thing is, a liar tends to manipulate. So a fear would then take what your potential is and reduce you down to doing nothing. Because, generally speaking, any sort of thing on the anxiety or fear spectrum causes regression, causes you to become less than what you have lived up to you don't get to live up to what you've attained. You become reduced down to your options are only what you're comfortable with, and also what you feel safe with, because it's all based on, an inaccessible freedom. Like, there is no freedom.
Yeah.
So
you see that especially with people with xenophobia, where they're afraid of people. They don't want to go outside. Agoraphobics too.
Yeah,
where
the fear
they
of the
don't want to go.
marketplace.
Yeah, they don't want to go outside. One time when I was a kid, my grandma and grandpa had a really big sliding glass door. And I remember we were sitting around talking. I don't remember what they were talking about, but it might have been something scary. I don't know. But I kept looking out the door, and I was like, it's completely and utterly black outside. Like, you can't see anything. And I kept thinking, man, anything could be out there, and come busting in here, because all we got is a glass door between us. And I was getting really afraid, and my dad was like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I don't know, I just feel really afraid all of a sudden. And Dad's like, oh, knock that stuff off. And my Uncle Mark was like, wait a minute, come here. He said, I want to show you something. And he took a piece of paper and he wrote FEAR. And he says, what does that say? And I said, fear. And he was like, okay. And he put false evidence appearing real. Yeah. And he says, that's what fear is. He said, you don't know what's out there. You're just letting your mind play tricks on you. Yeah. And I kept that in my wallet for years, and
the
thought
glass
about
door?
that. The glass door, I kept it in my wallet the whole time.
Is it glass door?
My Uncle Mark. I kept my Uncle Mark in my wallet. And whenever I needed wisdom, I could take him out and he would tell me stuff.
So when you were away from him, you were missing the mark?
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm away from him now, and I'm missing the mark now.
Mark is sin. Yeah.
One of my favorite uncles.
Gloucester is a city in England, I think, isn't it?
Yes, I think so.
Or Massachusetts too, Gloucester?
Could be, yeah. Gloucester. So we've got there was something I wanted to tag onto that about fear.
I think we should talk. I might have to wrap it up because I have to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But we could talk about fear next time. I think it's a great topic.
Next time I want to talk about dual weapon wielding and ambidexterity.
Yes.
And I think that'll be a fun one.
Chirality. So, you also you sent me the thing about the dimensions.
I want to talk about that too at some point. Yeah. I think we're going to need to do more research on that one. I think that could be a big can of worms. I think we should plan that for maybe 2 weeks out, so that way we got more time to really look into it. Because I was watching, I think it was on that one that talked about the 11 different dimensions and how anything past 11 would collapse in upon itself.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've got to understand that more. That blows my mind. Too. Yeah, so I want to look into that. But next week, I feel like we'll do the dual weapons. But we were negligent last week.
Oh, I know where you're going.
And we forgot to throw our pitch out there at Josh Scott of JHS Pedals.
Yeah, that's right.
We want you to watch our show, buddy. And we really have a lot of good ideas for pedals. And I thought of a pedal that I would really like to see.
I got one too.
And I want to call it the Good Vibrations pedal. Okay. That basically, as you strum a chord, it's like a harmony pedal.
Or a chorus.
But instead of guitar coming in, it actually brings in the voices of the Beach Boys doing oohs and ahs, and you can have a little switch to select oohs or ahs behind what you hit on the guitar.
That's right.
I want that. The Good Vibration pedal.
It can get each of the Beach Boy voices. So this one
you can do Carl Wilson. You can put in Brian, Mike Love, Al Jardine, just whatever. You sample them.
I need more love. It's kind of cool though. I feel like
I think it'd be a cool pedal.
I was thinking making the Chupacabra, and
Chupacabra.
it'd make like a sucking sound. You know,
Yes.
like because it's like
Well, it could be a talk box.
it could be a talk box, like a really like a goat sound. Yeah, like
you'd have to call. That would be the David. What was his name? David Crowder pedal.
Yes.
Sounds like a goat.
Yeah.
I remember one time when Liam was really little, we went to go see David Crowder at Winter Jam. And he says, "Dad, why does this guy sing like a goat?" Like, so from then on out, I was like, I can't think of David Crowder any other way.
Yeah. He gets kicked out of claustrophobic festivals.
Yeah.
Because he's a Crowder.
Because he's Crowder.
Because
he crowds them out.
Nobody likes a Crowder, especially claustrophobics.
That's funny. Well, so those are our pitches for Josh.
That's right. The Good Vibrations is a really good one. And
I think that'd be a fun pedal. And I don't think it'd be hard to build.
No.
I mean, it sounds like they've already got pedals that do choir effects behind the guitar anyway.
Yeah.
So it's like, but this one would just be tailored to sound like the Beach Boys. I do want to tell you to go to redbubble.com, type in the Hidden Citadel, and buy our t-shirts. We got a brand new t-shirt called the Eufy. And I've even got other versions than the two that are on the screen. I added, Greg mentioned it'd be cool to have a yellow outline, so they exist now too. And the hats, I ordered a hat because I lost my other Hidden Citadel hat. I think I left it at a restaurant. So somebody out there is enjoying wearing my Hidden Citadel hat, I'm sure.
Yes.
But it's out there somewhere. But then we also have the Encyclopedia of Weird Crap that you can go buy. And the second volume is, I'm hoping, what I would like to do is when we start, I feel like we'll start a new season each year to mark the anniversary of when we launch. So in September, we will launch season 2. And we will also launch book 2, volume 2 of the Encyclopedia of Weird Crap. So look for it in September.
Yes.
And then also, I just uploaded an article about the Chupacabra on hiddencitadel4.wordpress.com. So you can go and read a whole bunch of really cool articles. And also this week, I published a couple articles on medicinal herbs.
That was awesome.
Those were cool articles.
Love that.
And I've actually got a lot of that stuff growing in my garden. And so I know how much how useful it is to grow those kind of herbs. And with my broken ankle, I've been putting comfrey, a salve that my mom made on my ankle, and I'm actually so I broke it not Sunday, but the Sunday before last. I'm already able to kind of limp around and put weight on it, and that's less than 2 weeks. So it really does help bone regrow and get up.
And it grew a wing off the back of your heel, like Prince Namor. Yeah,
I am just I can swim better now.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful thing.
It is.
If you put it on your back, you'll get bat wings, and you can be the next Chupacabra. So that's it, people. Go buy all of our stuff, and
Josh Scott,
you need to be. We love you, and we need you to love us too.
That's right. We're codependent here.
Yeah, it's a need of ours.
Yes.
That's it. All right. We will see you next time in the Hidden Citadel.
Because night is coming.
The watchman replies, morning is coming, but night will soon return.